Protection is often imagined as something visible, something dramatic that intervenes at the moment of danger. People expect protection to appear when fear arises or when harm is already near. Yet the deepest forms of protection do not operate at the level of events. They operate at the level of order. Ayatul Kursi is not a verse that waits for danger to appear before acting. It establishes a reality in which danger struggles to take form at all. Its power is quiet, constant, and unseen, shaping the structure of existence long before the mind becomes aware that anything needs guarding. Ayatul Kursi does not approach life from the angle most people expect. It does not begin with danger, fear, or protection from harm. Instead, it begins at a much deeper level, at the level of authority and order. The verse speaks about who governs existence, who sustains it without interruption, and who possesses complete awareness of everything that moves within it. By doing so, it addresses reality at its foundation, long before events appear on the surface of life. When the verse affirms that nothing escapes divine knowledge, it removes the idea that anything happens randomly or independently. Every movement, every shift, and every outcome exists within a single, unified order. This understanding changes how protection works. Protection is no longer something that reacts to danger after it appears. It becomes something that exists before danger has the chance to form. When reality is held within a clear structure, disorder finds no space to grow. Ayatul Kursi establishes that sustainment is constant and uninterrupted. This means existence is not left unattended, even for a moment. Many fears arise from the belief that things can slip out of control or that unseen forces operate freely without oversight. The verse corrects this belief by grounding the heart in the knowledge that sustainment never pauses. Nothing is left to drift on its own. Everything is continuously held, balanced, and maintained. This is why chaos loses its ability to expand when this order is recognized. Chaos depends on fragmentation. It thrives where things appear separate, unmanaged, or disconnected. Ayatul Kursi removes fragmentation by affirming unity and authority. When unity is restored, instability weakens, not because it is fought, but because it no longer fits within the structure that governs reality. Protection, in this sense, is not aggressive. It does not involve resistance, struggle, or confrontation. It works through alignment. When existence is aligned with its true order, disruption becomes unnatural. Reality begins to move in a way that supports coherence rather than conflict. What does not belong within this coherence quietly fades before it becomes visible. This is why the verse does not describe protection in dramatic terms. It does not promise visible miracles or sudden interventions. Instead, it establishes conditions where harm struggles to materialize at all. The verse does not chase threats away. It prevents them from finding a foothold. This kind of protection is subtle, but it is also far more stable and lasting. Ayatul Kursi also teaches that authority is not distributed across creation. Nothing possesses independent power to act outside divine will. This understanding removes unnecessary fear from the heart. When the heart no longer believes that harm operates freely, anxiety begins to soften. Life no longer feels like a battlefield where threats must constantly be anticipated. Instead, it feels ordered, supported, and held. When this order is acknowledged, the mind relaxes its vigilance. Constant mental defense weakens because it is no longer needed. The heart learns to trust the structure that governs existence rather than relying solely on personal effort. This trust itself becomes a form of protection because many dangers enter through panic, confusion, and misaligned decisions rather than through external force. Reality, shaped by structure, behaves differently. Decisions emerge with more clarity. Paths that would have led to unnecessary difficulty quietly close. Situations that could have escalated dissolve before they gain momentum. From the outside, this may appear as good timing or coincidence. From within, it feels like stability and ease. Ayatul Kursi also establishes proportion. Nothing is allowed to grow beyond its rightful place. Fear often magnifies problems before they exist. The verse restores balance by reminding the heart that nothing overwhelms the order that sustains it. When problems are placed in their proper scale, they lose the power to dominate perception. This is how disruption is prevented rather than managed. Instead of reacting to events, the verse reshapes the conditions from which events emerge. It does not change reality moment by moment. It maintains reality continuously. This maintenance is what makes Ayatul Kursi uniquely powerful. Its protection is not episodic, it is structural. When reality is organized in this way, what cannot align simply does not proceed. Harm does not always need to be blocked. Often, it only needs to be deprived of permission to exist. Ayatul Kursi removes that permission by affirming a reality governed by uninterrupted awareness, authority, and care. This understanding changes how one relates to life. Instead of living in anticipation of danger, the heart learns to live in alignment with order. Instead of bracing for impact, it rests in trust. Instead of reacting to chaos, it exists within coherence. Ayatul Kursi establishes reality before events because it speaks to the source from which events arise. When the source is ordered, the surface follows naturally. This is the deepest form of protection, not the kind that saves you at the last moment, but the kind that makes saving unnecessary in the first place. The human mind is trained to recognize protection only when it can trace a clear sequence of cause and effect. It looks for visible changes, measurable outcomes, and direct evidence that something has intervened. If a problem appears and then disappears, the mind feels satisfied. If danger is avoided in an obvious way, the mind feels reassured. But Ayatul Kursi does not operate within this visible sequence. It works at a level that the mind is not naturally equipped to monitor. The mind observes what has already taken shape. It notices events after intention has solidified, after movement has begun, and after direction has already been set. Ayatul Kursi, however, acts before these stages. It influences the unseen pathways that give rise to events in the first place. It shapes inclination before decision, direction before movement, and possibility before outcome. Because the mind arrives late in this process, it often misses what has already been prevented. This is why the protection of Ayatul Kursi rarely feels dramatic. Nothing crashes into view and then vanishes. Instead, certain situations never develop momentum. Certain encounters never happen. Certain thoughts lose urgency before turning into action. The mind does not register these absences as protection because it cannot measure what never fully existed. It only registers what appears. The mind also depends heavily on contrast. It understands safety by comparing it to danger. If danger was never felt, safety feels ordinary. Ayatul Kursi often removes danger so early that no contrast forms. The result is a sense of normalcy rather than relief. Life feels steady, uneventful, or calm, and the mind assumes nothing special occurred. Yet this calm is often the outcome of deep, continuous ordering rather than luck. Another reason the mind fails to recognize this work is its attachment to control. The mind prefers to believe that outcomes are shaped by planning, vigilance, and personal effort. When protection arrives without effort, it threatens this belief. It is more comfortable for the mind to label such moments as coincidence than to accept that reality is being shaped beyond its awareness. Chance feels safer than surrender. Ayatul Kursi also protects by redirecting rather than stopping. The mind expects protection to block or remove obstacles. Instead, the verse often shifts direction subtly. You are delayed, distracted, redirected, or lose interest in something that would have led to difficulty. From the mind's perspective, this can feel frustrating or insignificant. Only later does understanding emerge, when the heart recognizes what that redirection quietly avoided. The mind lives in immediacy. It focuses on what is happening now and what might happen next. Ayatul Kursi operates on continuity. Its protection unfolds across time, maintaining balance rather than interrupting crises. Because the mind prefers moments over patterns, it overlooks the consistent stability that the verse establishes. Stability feels ordinary to the mind, even though it is often the result of constant, unseen care. Fear also plays a role in this blindness. The mind becomes alert only when fear is activated. If fear never arises, attention remains low. Ayatul Kursi often prevents fear itself, dissolving it before it sharpens awareness. This means the mind never enters a state of heightened recognition. Protection passes quietly, unnoticed, because alarm was never triggered. The heart, however, perceives differently. It does not require evidence in the same way. It senses alignment, ease, and coherence. It notices when life flows without unnecessary resistance. It recognizes when outcomes feel guided rather than forced. While the mind sees randomness, the heart senses intention. While the mind sees absence of danger, the heart feels presence of order. This difference is why recognition often comes later. In retrospect, the mind begins to notice patterns it could not see while living through them. You realize how many times things could have gone wrong but did not. How often situations resolved themselves without struggle. How frequently clarity appeared at the right moment. What once looked like chance slowly reveals itself as consistency. Ayatul Kursi does not seek recognition. Its work does not depend on awareness. It establishes order whether it is acknowledged or not. This is part of its mercy. Even when the mind is distracted, doubtful, or inattentive, the structure remains intact. Protection continues without requiring belief, focus, or emotional intensity. The mind's failure to recognize this work is not a flaw. It is a limitation of its role. The mind was not created to oversee reality's deepest movements. It was created to navigate what has already surfaced. Ayatul Kursi speaks to what exists beneath that surface, where movement is shaped long before it becomes visible. When this is understood, the heart no longer demands proof. It does not need to see danger avoided to trust protection. It rests in the awareness that much of what threatens life never reaches it at all. The heart learns that the greatest forms of safety are not those that rescue at the last moment, but those that quietly prevent the need for rescue. This is why the work of Ayatul Kursi often feels invisible. It is not absent. It is simply operating at a depth the mind cannot easily access. And when the heart learns to recognize this depth, gratitude replaces fear, and trust replaces the need for constant explanation. One of the heaviest burdens the human mind carries is the belief that it must manage everything in order for life to remain safe. This belief develops quietly over time. The mind learns to calculate, anticipate, prepare, and defend, until vigilance becomes a constant state. Control begins to feel like responsibility, and responsibility begins to feel like survival. Yet beneath this effort lies exhaustion. The mind was never designed to carry the weight of governing reality, and Ayatul Kursi gently exposes this truth. Ayatul Kursi does not confront the mind aggressively or accuse it of weakness. Instead, it re-establishes reality by reminding the heart where authority truly resides. It speaks of a dominion that never sleeps, never forgets, and never loses hold of what it sustains. When this truth settles, the mind begins to loosen its grip. It realizes that it was never meant to oversee existence, only to navigate within it. This realization alone releases an immense amount of inner tension. False control is exhausting because it is based on fear. The mind believes that if it stops managing outcomes, chaos will immediately follow. Anxiety survives in this space of imagined responsibility. The mind assumes ownership over things it cannot truly command, and then lives in constant anticipation of failure. Ayatul Kursi dissolves this pattern by removing misplaced responsibility. When authority is returned to its true source, fear loses the foundation it depends on. This shift does not make the mind passive or careless. Instead, it restores balance. The mind returns to its rightful role as a witness, an observer, and a responder, rather than a ruler. From this position, clarity increases. Decisions are no longer rushed by panic. Actions are taken with awareness instead of urgency. The heart feels supported rather than isolated in its effort to hold life together. Ayatul Kursi also reveals that much of what the mind tries to control does not require control at all. Life unfolds according to a deeper order that does not depend on human supervision. When the mind stops interfering excessively, this order becomes more visible. Situations resolve with less resistance. Paths become clearer. Outcomes align more naturally. What once required strain now unfolds with ease. The illusion of control often disguises itself as responsibility toward others, toward outcomes, or toward the future. While responsibility has its place, false control goes beyond responsibility into domination. The mind attempts to manage what it cannot predict, and this attempt breeds tension. Ayatul Kursi corrects this imbalance by reminding the heart that sustainment is continuous and complete. Nothing is being neglected. Nothing is left unattended. When this understanding deepens, anxiety weakens naturally. Anxiety depends on the belief that something essential is at risk if the mind relaxes. Ayatul Kursi removes this belief by affirming uninterrupted care. The heart no longer feels that it must remain on guard at all times. Rest becomes possible, not because problems disappear, but because their authority diminishes. This is why the verse does not need to mention fear directly. By restoring proper authority, fear loses relevance. When the heart knows it is not alone in maintaining existence, it stops bracing for collapse. Trust replaces vigilance. Calm replaces tension. Protection becomes an internal state rather than an external request. Ayatul Kursi also teaches that true strength does not come from control, but from alignment. When the mind aligns with divine order, instead of competing with it, effort becomes efficient rather than draining. The heart moves with reality instead of against it. In this alignment, protection is not something to beg for, it is something already present. The verse removes the need for constant negotiation with the future. The mind no longer needs to imagine every possible outcome to feel safe. It learns to remain present, grounded in the moment it is actually living. This presence itself is protective because many dangers arise from distraction, overthinking, and reactive decision-making. As false control dissolves, the body also responds. Tension eases, breath deepens, the nervous system settles. What once felt like pressure becomes space. The mind becomes clearer because it is no longer burdened with impossible tasks. In this clarity, perception sharpens and discernment improves. Ayatul Kursi does not take responsibility away from the human being. It takes the illusion away. It frees the heart from carrying what was never meant to be carried. In doing so, it restores dignity to both the mind and the soul. The mind becomes a servant of awareness instead of a guard against imagined collapse. When the mind releases false control, protection becomes natural rather than reactive. Life no longer feels like a constant emergency. The heart learns that safety does not come from constant effort, but from correct placement within reality. Ayatul Kursi places the heart exactly where it belongs, within a structure that does not depend on human strain to remain intact. This is the quiet power of the verse. It does not promise to fix everything the mind fears. It dissolves the fear itself by correcting the belief that created it. And when fear dissolves, protection no longer feels like something is missing. It feels like something that was always there, waiting for the mind to stop standing in the wrong place. Ayatul Kursi does not begin its work at the surface of life. It does not first address the body, the environment, or external events. Its protection begins much deeper, at the level where choices are formed, meanings are interpreted, and direction is set. It protects the inner orientation of the heart, because the heart is the place where life is first received. When the heart is aligned, everything that follows takes a different shape. A heart aligned with divine order does not move through life with the same tension or confusion. It does not rush to conclusions or react impulsively to every stimulus. Instead, it responds with steadiness. Decisions become calmer because they are no longer driven by fear or urgency. Reactions soften because the heart is no longer defending itself against imagined threats. Perception sharpens because attention is not scattered by anxiety or inner noise. Many forms of harm do not enter life through sudden force or visible danger. They enter quietly through misunderstanding, misjudgment, and emotional imbalance. A confused heart misreads situations, exaggerates risks, and underestimates consequences. It chooses poorly not because it is careless, but because it is misaligned. Ayatul Kursi addresses this root condition by restoring clarity at the level of the heart itself. When inner alignment is restored, the heart becomes a place of coherence rather than conflict. Thoughts no longer pull in opposing directions. Emotions are felt without overwhelming judgment. Intentions become clearer. This internal order acts as a filter. Situations that would have escalated lose their grip. Paths that would have led to unnecessary hardship quietly fade from relevance. Ayatul Kursi protects by organizing perception before action occurs. The heart begins to see more accurately. It recognizes when to speak and when to remain silent. It senses when to move forward and when to wait. This sensitivity prevents many difficulties from ever forming. The verse does not remove problems after they arrive. It prevents the conditions that invite them. Inner alignment also changes how external events are experienced. Challenges may still appear, but they do not enter the heart with the same force. The heart remains anchored, allowing it to respond wisely rather than reactively. This anchored state is itself a form of protection, because panic often creates more damage than the original situation. The verse also reduces inner fragmentation. When the heart is misaligned, it is pulled between desire, fear, memory, and expectation. This fragmentation weakens discernment. Ayatul Kursi restores unity within the heart by reminding it of a single governing order. When the heart is unified, it moves with clarity and confidence rather than hesitation and doubt. Confusion often invites harm because it delays recognition. A confused heart does not see warning signs clearly. It misinterprets intentions, overlooks subtle cues, and reacts too late. Ayatul Kursi sharpens awareness at this subtle level. It brings attentiveness without anxiety, allowing the heart to recognize what matters before it becomes overwhelming. Another form of protection created by inner alignment is restraint. The heart learns when not to act. Many harms arise not from inaction, but from unnecessary action taken at the wrong moment. Ayatul Kursi cultivates patience by grounding the heart in trust. This patience prevents impulsive decisions that lead to regret. When the heart is aligned, it also attracts different outcomes. Life responds to orientation. A calm heart encounters fewer collisions because it does not move aggressively against reality. It flows with circumstances rather than forcing its way through them. This does not mean life becomes effortless, but it becomes proportionate. Difficulty no longer multiplies unnecessarily. Ayatul Kursi also protects by stabilizing emotional responses. Fear, anger, and despair lose their dominance when the heart is aligned. Emotions still arise, but they do not control direction. This emotional balance prevents escalation. Many conflicts grow because emotions overpower clarity. When clarity remains intact, conflicts lose momentum. The verse also restores trust, and trust itself is protective. A heart that trusts does not panic when things are unclear. It does not rush to secure outcomes prematurely. This trust creates space for wiser solutions to emerge. Problems that would have worsened through fear dissolve through patience. What never enters the heart does not need to be removed later. Ayatul Kursi works at this preventative level. It protects by shaping the inner environment in which experiences are received. When the inner environment is ordered, only what belongs can settle there. This form of protection is subtle and continuous. It does not announce itself. It simply maintains alignment. Over time, the heart begins to notice that life feels less abrasive. Fewer situations escalate, decisions feel cleaner, outcomes feel more guided. What appears as ease is often the result of deep inner order. Ayatul Kursi teaches that true safety does not come from constant defense. It comes from correct alignment. When the heart is placed where it belongs within divine order, protection becomes natural. Life no longer feels like something to survive. It becomes something to navigate with clarity, trust, and steadiness. Many people assume that for a verse to be effective, it must be fully understood, deeply analyzed, or emotionally charged. This assumption comes from how the human mind usually works. The mind believes that impact depends on comprehension and intention. Yet, Ayatul Kursi operates according to a different principle altogether. Its power is not activated by how much the mind understands, but by what the verse itself affirms about reality. Ayatul Kursi is a declaration of truth, not a request built on human effort. Truth does not wait for the listener to grasp it in order to function. Fire burns whether one understands fire or not. Gravity holds whether one studies its laws or ignores them. In the same way, the truths spoken in Ayatul Kursi establish order simply by being affirmed. The verse states what is real, and reality responds to what is real. When Ayatul Kursi is recited, something deeper than thought is engaged. The verse reminds existence of its structure, its authority, and its source. This reminder does not depend on emotion, focus, or explanation. It operates at a level where meaning precedes language and order precedes events. Even when the tongue moves out of habit, the truth being spoken still carries weight. This is why habitual recitation is never empty. The mind may wander, attention may drift, and understanding may be limited, yet the verse continues to affirm reality as it is. It reinforces a structure where nothing exists independently and nothing escapes divine awareness. Each recitation quietly realigns the environment of the heart and the unseen layers surrounding it. Mercy plays a central role here. If protection depended entirely on perfect understanding, most people would be left unguarded. Ayatul Kursi demonstrates that divine care does not wait for human perfection. It reaches the servant where they are. Even partial awareness is enough for truth to act. Even imperfect presence allows order to respond. This does not mean understanding is unimportant. Understanding deepens experience and strengthens connection, but it is not a prerequisite for effect. A child may not understand the meaning of shelter, yet still be protected by it. In the same way, the heart can be sheltered by truth long before the mind learns to explain it. Recitation also works because sound itself carries alignment. Divine words are not merely symbols pointing to meaning, they are vehicles of meaning. When spoken, they introduce coherence into the space they occupy. This coherence affects perception, intention, and flow. Even when unnoticed, it reshapes what can enter and what cannot. Another reason recitation works without full understanding is that the verse does not rely on human belief to establish authority. Authority is already present. The verse simply states it. Reality does not debate this authority, it responds to it. This is why the effect of Ayatul Kursi often feels steady rather than dramatic. It does not shock the system, it stabilizes it. Habitual recitation also builds continuity. Each repetition reinforces the same structure. Over time, this continuity creates an environment where imbalance struggles to grow. Just as regular maintenance prevents collapse, consistent recitation maintains order, even when awareness fluctuates. The benefit accumulates quietly. Many people later notice that certain fears softened, certain situations resolved themselves, or certain paths never unfolded. These changes often cannot be traced to a single moment of intense focus. They emerge gradually, shaped by repeated alignment rather than sudden insight. The mind may not remember when the shift happened, but the heart feels the difference. Ayatul Kursi also works beyond conscious perception because it addresses layers the mind cannot access. The mind interacts with surface events, while the verse speaks to deeper arrangements. This is why protection may be present even when the mind feels distracted or weak. The work continues beneath awareness. This understanding removes unnecessary pressure from recitation. One no longer feels the need to force emotion, strain concentration, or fear doing it incorrectly. The verse does not demand performance. It invites presence. Even if that presence is simple and quiet, understanding often follows recitation rather than preceding it. As the heart becomes more ordered, clarity increases naturally. What was once mechanical becomes meaningful. What was once routine becomes conscious. The verse teaches first through effect, then through insight. The power of Ayatul Kursi demonstrates a profound mercy. Protection is not reserved for those with deep knowledge or perfect focus. It flows through truth itself. When truth is spoken, it acts. When it acts, it protects. And when it protects, it does so long before the mind realizes anything was ever at risk. This is why recitation works even without full understanding. The verse does not wait for the mind to catch up. It establishes order first and allows understanding to mature at its own pace. Ayatul Kursi presents a vision of reality that is profoundly different from how the human mind usually understands protection. The mind imagines protection as something that appears only when danger is near, like a response to an emergency. It expects defense to activate at moments of fear, stress, or threat. Ayatul Kursi quietly corrects this assumption by describing a reality in which care does not turn on and off. It reveals a sustainment that never pauses, never weakens, and never becomes distracted. The verse speaks of a care that does not tire. This detail is essential because human effort always carries fatigue. When the mind tries to guard itself constantly, it eventually becomes exhausted. Vigilance turns into anxiety, and caution turns into fear. Ayatul Kursi removes the need for this exhausting watchfulness by affirming that sustainment does not depend on human alertness. What maintains existence does not sleep, forget, or overlook even the smallest detail. This means protection is not reactive. It does not wait for danger to appear before acting. It does not rush in at the last moment to prevent collapse. Instead, it operates continuously, maintaining balance at every moment. You are not protected only when you feel afraid. You are protected when you feel calm, distracted, unaware, or even doubtful. Care does not fluctuate with your emotional state. Many people live as if stability must be earned through effort, planning, or constant control. This belief places enormous pressure on the heart. Life begins to feel fragile, as though everything could fall apart without constant management. Ayatul Kursi dissolves this pressure by reminding the heart that stability is not something to achieve. It is something already established. Existence itself rests within an uninterrupted order. When this understanding settles, something profound shifts inside. The heart no longer feels responsible for holding the world together. It realizes that it is being held. This realization softens inner tension. The body relaxes. The breath deepens. The mind releases its grip slightly, no longer convinced that vigilance is the only path to safety. Continuous care also changes how fear behaves. Fear thrives on the belief that danger can arrive at any moment without warning. Ayatul Kursi removes this belief by affirming constant awareness and sustainment. When the heart knows that nothing slips through unnoticed, fear loses its urgency. It no longer needs to shout to be heard. Over time, it quiets. This does not mean challenges disappear. Difficulty is part of life. But difficulty no longer carries the same threat. It is experienced within a larger sense of stability. The heart learns that even hardship unfolds within care, not outside of it. This perspective prevents despair from taking root. Ayatul Kursi also teaches that protection is not something you request only in moments of desperation. It is something you live within. When care is continuous, prayer becomes less about emergency and more about remembrance. The heart no longer reaches for protection out of panic. It rests in it as a constant presence. This understanding changes daily life. Small frustrations lose intensity, uncertainty becomes tolerable. The future feels less threatening because it is no longer imagined as unguarded. Even when answers are unclear, the heart remains steady because it knows that clarity is not absent, only unfolding. The verse also releases the soul from the habit of constant self-monitoring. Many people are exhausted, not by external danger, but by internal alertness. They are always bracing, anticipating, preparing for what might go wrong. Ayatul Kursi interrupts this cycle. It reminds the heart that care is not conditional on preparedness. It is unconditional and ongoing. This awareness cultivates trust. Trust does not mean passivity or neglect. It means acting without panic. It means planning without obsession. It means living without the constant background fear that something essential is being overlooked. Trust grows naturally when the heart rests in continuous care. This continuous care also creates emotional resilience. When the heart knows it is sustained at all times, it recovers more quickly from shock or disappointment. It does not collapse under pressure because it is not standing alone. It leans into a structure that remains stable regardless of circumstance. Ayatul Kursi therefore reframes protection entirely. Protection is no longer a momentary shield raised in crisis. It is an environment in which life unfolds. You move within it, not toward it. You are not waiting for it to arrive. You are already surrounded by it. As this truth becomes familiar, the soul begins to relax its constant defenses. The need to control diminishes. The need to anticipate every outcome fades. The heart learns to be present rather than vigilant. Peace emerges not because life is free of difficulty, but because care never withdraws. This is the quiet gift of Ayatul Kursi. It does not promise dramatic rescues. It offers something far more sustaining. It reminds the heart that it has never been left unattended, even for a moment. And when the heart truly understands this, exhaustion gives way to rest, fear gives way to trust, and life becomes something to live rather than something to guard against constantly. When Ayatul Kursi is recited with awareness, something changes that cannot be easily measured or explained. The change does not arrive as a surge of emotion or a dramatic feeling. It comes as a quiet settling. The heart, which may have been unconsciously bracing itself against life, begins to soften. There is a release from the constant readiness for impact, the subtle tension that forms when one expects difficulty to arrive at any moment. This release is gentle, but it is deeply transformative. Awareness in recitation does not mean forcing concentration or creating intensity. It means allowing the meanings of the verse to pass through the heart without resistance. As the words are spoken, the heart listens, not with analysis, but with openness. In this openness, the heart begins to recognize that it is not standing alone in the world. It is not responsible for holding everything together. This recognition alone changes how life is experienced. When the heart stops bracing, life no longer feels like something to endure or survive. Many people move through their days as if life is a series of threats waiting to unfold. Even in moments of calm, there is an underlying tension, a sense that peace is temporary and must be guarded. Ayatul Kursi dissolves this stance by restoring the heart's relationship with reality. Life no longer feels hostile, it feels held. With awareness, dependence begins to shift. Before this shift, dependence often rests on effort. The heart believes safety comes from planning, vigilance, and constant adjustment. This belief creates exhaustion. Ayatul Kursi gently moves dependence away from effort and toward trust. Trust here does not mean passivity or neglect. It means recognizing where support truly comes from. Effort remains, but it is no longer burdened with fear. This transfer of dependence happens quietly. The heart does not announce it. It simply feels lighter. Decisions feel less pressured. The need to control outcomes weakens. The heart still engages with life, but it does so without the same urgency. There is room to breathe. There is space to pause. This space allows wisdom to surface naturally. Peace begins to arise at this stage, but it is important to understand what kind of peace this is. It is not comfortable based on circumstances improving. Problems may still exist. Uncertainty may still be present. Challenges may still lie ahead. The peace that emerges does not depend on these conditions changing. It arises because the authority of these conditions has diminished. Before awareness, problems feel powerful. They dominate attention and shape emotional states. With awareness, their power weakens. They are seen as part of a larger order rather than as threats to existence. The heart realizes that difficulties do not govern reality. They exist within it. This realization reduces their weight. This peace is not emotional numbness. It does not dull feeling or remove sensitivity. On the contrary, awareness sharpens sensitivity. The heart becomes more present, more attentive, more responsive. But it is no longer overwhelming. Emotions pass through rather than taking control. Thoughts arise without dictating direction. The inner environment becomes stable. Ayatul Kursi, when recited with awareness, also changes how time is experienced. The future loses some of its threat. The past loosens its grip. Attention settles more fully in the present moment. This presence is protective in itself. Many forms of suffering arise from living too far ahead or too far behind. Awareness brings the heart back to where life is actually happening. As this practice continues, the heart develops confidence, but not the kind rooted in self-assurance. It is a confidence rooted in alignment. The heart senses that it is moving within a reality that is ordered, sustained, and attentive. This confidence does not need reinforcement. It does not seek validation. It simply rests. Another subtle change occurs in how the heart approaches prayer and remembrance. Recitation is no longer used only as a shield against fear. It becomes a means of staying aligned. The verse is not reached for only in moments of distress. It becomes a companion, a reminder of the structure within which life unfolds. This consistency deepens the effect. Awareness during recitation also refines perception. The heart becomes better at distinguishing between real threats and imagined ones. Many anxieties are revealed to be products of assumption rather than reality. This clarity prevents unnecessary emotional expenditure. Energy is conserved. Focus improves. The body responds as well. Tension held in the muscles begins to release. Breath becomes steadier. Sleep deepens. These changes are not forced. They arise naturally as the nervous system senses safety. When the heart no longer signals constant danger, the body follows. What makes this peace profound is that it does not depend on maintaining awareness perfectly. Even brief moments of presence during recitation can realign the heart. The effect lingers. It shapes how the heart returns to daily life. Over time, the heart learns this orientation and revisits it more easily. When Ayatul Kursi is recited with awareness, the heart aligns with a reality that cannot be threatened. This does not mean harm never occurs. It means harm does not define existence. It means difficulty does not have the final word. The heart recognizes that it is living within continuous care, not temporary safety. This alignment changes everything quietly. Life becomes something to engage with rather than defend against. The heart moves forward without armor, not because danger is denied, but because trust has replaced fear. This is the deepest effect of awareness in recitation. Not escape from reality, but alignment with the truth that holds it together. Ayatul Kursi does not promise a life without difficulty, nor does it remove the need to walk through uncertainty. Its gift is far deeper. It restores the heart to its rightful place within a reality that is already ordered, sustained, and guarded. When the heart remembers this, it no longer lives in anticipation of harm or in fear of what might come next. It learns to rest within continuous care. Protection becomes something lived rather than something requested, and trust replaces the habit of constant vigilance. The verse does not change life by force. It changes how life is held. In that holding, fear loosens, clarity returns, and the heart moves forward with quiet confidence, knowing it is never outside the reach of what sustains it.